This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good morning, this is Frida Liu. It's time to raise your game, and here with me today is Dr. Billy Kueek, and he's from Billy Kueek International, and our discussion today is to live by design, not by default. Before we get into that topic, tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Kueek, and your company.
Okay, we started off doing soft skills training for corporate companies, and because of my background training in NLP, in timeline therapy since 1994, increasingly I get corporate companies and HR directors asking me to do soft skills training, such as leadership or negotiation or presentation, but with a psychological perspective. So that's where we start inputting NLP into a lot of this business skills training.
And how, I guess, people are more receptive nowadays to the whole concept of NLP and all that.
That's right.
You know, I think also people who do know about it, they, still have misconceptions about it. And we'll discuss that in just a moment. I know in your programs is to live by design, not by default. And tell us a little bit about this program.
Okay, as a speaker trainer, very often we try to find the most effective way to get a message across. And one of the things I found was to use quotations. And as such, I start writing a lot of quotations myself. So the quotation, as you have write it out, is live by design and not by default. And so really, when we look at the program that we're doing, because we combine NLP, we combine timeline therapy, hypnotherapy, coaching techniques into it, it's really empowering people so that they can live life by design and not by default. And hence, we call it live by design.
So a lot of us live by default.
I would think a lot of us are being led by what's around us, the people around us. Parents like to impose their own ambitions, which did not get fulfilled onto the kids, you know. So really, a lot of times we're being led by what people tell us, what the economy tells us, what the politicians tells us, rather than to live life on our own terms.
And I know, as I was saying, there are misconceptions that people still have about NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. What are some of these misconceptions?
Okay, I think because there are now increasingly more and more trainers in the market doing NLP, and each of them try to outdo each other by putting in something special. So they get people walking over the glass, over fire, and that, you know, in the Asian context, that has some religious connotations. And because of that, it gets a little bit into that wishy-washy and, you
space.
know, that's right. Yeah. So some people even thought of that as being a contradiction to their spiritual teachings and stuff. So that ward off a lot of people. You know, NLP is that walking over the fire kind of thing. You know, all right. So I think that's what's holding some people back with regard to taking on that training, because, you know, they're rather spiritual themselves and they don't contradict their spiritual teachings. When actually NLP is more, I would call it more psychology. It's more about managing yourself. It's more about dealing with your own states. It's more about understanding people, rather than walking over the fire. But really, these trainers are doing it, for one, I think they're competing and trying to outdo each other, getting attention. But really, doing that is more like symbolically breaking through. It's like, if you go through a tough challenge like that, then that instills confidence, that instills motivation and power within us to make us feel like, hey, if I can do this, then I can do a lot more things in life. Yeah. Okay, so that's really what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so you just, rather than walking over fire, it's the simple things that we can do in our everyday life.
That's right.
Okay, now I was going through the things that you actually teach, and when you talk about communication skills, one of the things that you teach, people think of very simple communication skills, but you talk about predicates and sensory acuity. What are these, and how do you apply them in everyday life?
Okay, there's a reason why techniques like NLP is being taught to the FBI's agents, is taught to the CIA agents. I do work with the Singapore Police Force. I do work with the Hong Kong ICAC. Predicates refers to how we show characteristics on the outside that reflects what's going on our inside. So NLP believes that the mind and body, they're connected.
It's like they show Lie to Me.
That's right. Yeah. Not just Lie to Me, I mean, The Mentalist, and now more and more shows are incorporating that. If you remember a show by Samuel Jackson, title was The Negotiator, he actually talked about, if the eyes were to move in a certain direction, That means we're activating certain parts of the mind, and therefore you can actually read people and tell if they're lying, if they move their eyes to the right versus moving their eyes to the left and all. So this is just all some of NLP's stuff, Predicates in particular refer to the language patterns that we use. Like if you talk to someone on the phone and you don't have anything to show them. While describing, you hear that their response to you is, I see what you mean, when there's actually nothing to see. So that's kind of strange, but if you understand NLP, then you will know that the person chooses to use the word see primarily because he uses more of his sense of sight rather than his other senses.
Very visual.
That's right. And therefore, they tend to think in pictures. So anything you talk to them will be translated to pictures in their mind. And when they say, I see, they're really responding to their own mental thinking, their own mental maps. Yeah, so that's predicates.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what about sensory acuity?
Sensory acuity is about observing people, knowing what signs to observe so that you know that there's shift internally of the other person. Like, for example, for a normally organized right-handed person, if their eyes are moved to the right-hand side, that means that they are constructing inside their brain. So if they move up towards the right, they're visually constructing something, imagining something. If the eyes are up to the left, then it's visual remembered, so they're recalling something. So by knowing sensory acuity means once I understand things like that, I can better observe a person. Say, for example, a manager doing an interview, asking a candidate about, if you've got experience on this, and then you watch that the eyes actually went to the right, which is visual construct when the person is normally organized.
Okay.
That's a sign the person is not telling you the truth.
Oh.
Yeah, so it can be useful in that sense. Yeah, okay. NLP goes on to study about facial expressions, like the lower lip, the lines will go disappearing or gets less visible if there's a shift in the person. All right, or when the person is interested, the pupil will dilate. So we learn how to read signs like that. And hence, when you look at the TV series like The Lie to Me, The Mentalist, they're really depending on things like that to read people. Because whatever happens inside reflects on the outside.
But I guess, like you say, in everyday life, during interviews, or even dealing with a colleague or a staff.
Right.
So you just want to know what's going through. And
Spouse.
Oh dear. Oh dear. All right. And we'll touch on linguistics, which is another thing that you actually share in just a moment. I'm here with Dr. Billy Kueek from Billy Kueek International in Raise Your Game, BFM 89.9. This is Raise Your Game. Good morning, Frida Liu here. I'm having a chat with Dr. Billy Kueek from Billy Kueek International. We're discussing one of the programs that he does, which is Live by Design, Not by Default. And early on, you shared about communication skills, and you talk about predicates and sensory acuity. And I guess, as you were saying, this is how you can apply this, not only just in TV shows like Lie to Me, but in everyday life.
That's right.
Dealing with the people around us. The other thing, which is also very interesting, is linguistics. And you think of language, you think of English, you think of French, but obviously not the case here. You have the meta model, the hierarchy of ideas, and the Milton model, among other things. Tell us a little bit about the hierarchy ideas. What's that all about?
Hierarchy of ideas simply refers to how people organize information. Now, we say that majority of the time, men are more the big chunk thinkers, which really what it means is that the way in which men organize ideas is that we're very generalized with ideas, and that then you have on the other side, the women tend to be more the detailed thinkers, right? And so in communication, you find women jump into the details all the time, whereas men are very generalized. So you get a guy who's out there attending a training over the weekend, sacrificing family time. Naturally, the wife would be very anxious, wants to know what's going on, what kind of training. And so when the men come back and she go like, "Hey, darling, how's the training?" And he goes like, "Not bad." When she's actually looking to hear more information. So so that's an example of very generalized communication versus people who are detailed. Now, NLP advocates that when it comes to winning with people, dealing with people, we got to build rapport with other people so that we can exert more influence, we can get our message across more effectively. And the way to do it is to communicate in the way that the other party like to receive. So if you've got someone who is very detailed and you're very general in your communication with them, obviously that communication is not linking very well. They're not connecting very well. Yeah. So that's what hierarchy of ideas simply means.
Okay, trying to find that link.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Finding how people organize ideas so that you can communicate in the way that suits them, in the way that works for them.
Okay. And the Milton model?
Milton model was taken from Milton Erickson, known as the father of modern hypnotherapy. So a lot of NLP has got to do with hypnosis. All right. So that simply tells us if we're going to learn from the father of modern hypnotherapy, then it means we are using language that are hypnotic by nature.
Ooh. Am I ready for this?
One of the things, I'm not sure about people on the road right now listening to this, but one of the things we do is we learn about certain language patterns that are well accepted by people, certain language patterns that get agreement from other people. Like if we look at the American president's campaign, Obama is known to be a master hypnotist. If we look at the script that he used, his campaign tagline was "Change we can believe in." All right, that's agreeable to many Americans, but he doesn't tell you what kind of change. So Milton model is really being artfully vague.
Artfully vague.
And ambiguous.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's an art to it.
Yeah. And when you talk about language patterns, like you said, it's just not the normal day-to-day communication or the language that we use. It's really about using the words and knowing the effect of the words on people. NLP is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So language has an effect on the brain that creates programming in other people. So we can make people do things if they don't want to do it simply by using language patterns to influence. For example, a lot of times you get parents telling their kids they should not do this, they must not do this, and then the kids will do it. So parents come complaining and say, hey, my kids are very rebellious. I tell them not to do it and they will purposely do it. And the kid was like, no, I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I don't know why I end up doing it. Yeah. The problem is that if you understand NLP, then you know that the brain does not process the negative. So if I were to say right now, do not think of an elephant. The elephant pops up in the mind, right? So in understanding language patterns like that, we can be very strategic about our usage.
Right.
Get our message across more effectively, tell people what to do, not what you don't want them to do. Now, for ourselves, because language influences us as well, we do a lot of self-talk all the time. So when we want to kick a bad habit, we give ourselves affirmations. We say things like, I will not get drunk anymore. And then guess what happens? Because the wrong use of language to yourself, wrong results. Yeah, so that's just some examples.
Okay, so it's using for the good, not for the bad.
That's right.
Okay, you can be you can be artfully vague for your good.
Yes.
Okay. What about the meta model?
Meta model works exactly the opposite. While Milton model is about being artfully vague, meta model is about being really detailed and really clear. So we, NLP just kind of like try things out from various angles by polarity. A lot of times we find that two opposite approaches, they can produce the same result. So Milton is about being very vague and meta is about being very detailed. Meta model is when you ask questions like the what, the how, the which, the when, but we don't ask why.
Oh, okay. What's the purpose of doing that when you ask the what, the when, the who, but the why?
Meta model was actually one of the first models that was developed by the founders of NLP, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, because they found that through the use of language patterns, we can influence people's thinking. And instead of telling people to look at things from a different angle, we find that questions are more effective, such as, what other ways can you think of that you can deal with this situation? Because that brings out the wisdom in people. It helps to ignite light, ignite solutions in other people, and ideas in other people. Yeah. So NLP started off as a psychotherapy tool. So a lot of times, instead of telling our clients what they should be doing with their life, we ask them questions like, okay, so what do you think you can do about it? What other ways can you do about it? How are you going to do this?
Okay, and I guess that when you come up with the answers, you get more conviction as well, as opposed to someone telling you what to do.
That's right.
So,
okay, I mean, in the context of business application, when the manager tells the staff what to do, it's not going to be as effective as if you use a question and the staff say what they will do. They will do it more than, if they were to hear it from you, than for them to say it themselves.
Okay. All right. One of the things, especially with training and all that, you learn this, you're great, and you do some application. But sometimes, we tend to forget some things, after we've gone through some sort of training. So what do you do then?
Okay, like the way we do it, we use NLP to teach NLP. So the basis of which is if you know NLP, then you know how the brain receives information, how certain language will make it more effective in terms of creating a program inside the person's mind. So what we do is we use a lot of NLP strategies when we are teaching NLP. in that sense, we install information into the mind. We put in the right portion of skills into different parts of the mind that will then be stored for activation later on. So very often we get our students who come back and tell us things like, I was caught in that situation the other day, and I knew that I learned something about dealing with it, but I just can't remember what it is. For some strange reasons, I just automatically use the right strategy. And then upon reflection later on, we go like, hey, I've been taught this one already. Yeah, so that's what we mean by installation.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing, Dr. Kueek. I've been having a chat with Dr. Billy Kueek from Billy Kueek International on living by design, not by default. This is Raise Your Game, BFM 89.9.